If you're a parent listening to this right now, there is a very specific sequence of numbers that probably triggers this immediate physiological stress response in your body.
Oh, I know exactly what you're going to say.
Right. It goes like this: 5, 4, 3.
The universal countdown.
It really is.
Yeah.
It's the countdown that means you are standing in your living room, you're staring at a kid who is just entirely absorbed in a screen, and you're desperately trying to regain control of the situation before a complete meltdown occurs.
Yeah, that countdown is basically the sound of parental exhaustion. I mean, it usually means you've already asked 3 times nicely, you've tried reasoning, and now, well, you're resorting to the nuclear option.
Exactly. And you're likely just so tired of that daily tug of war. I mean, you're tired of negotiating like a hostage crisis negotiator every single evening.
Right.
You're tired of feeling like the bad guy. And you are definitely tired of hearing that dreaded phrase, just 5 more minutes.
Always 5 more minutes.
Always. So today we're doing a deep dive into a concept that it aims to completely dismantle that exhausting dynamic. We've pulled together a really interesting stack of sources for this one.
We really have. We're looking at some recent articles on modern parenting, a bit of behavioral research on digital wellness, and our core source today.
Yeah, it's this really unique document and framework created by the team at Bornfab. They run a platform designed around this earn-to-play philosophy for kids. And their document, it's called The Peace Agreement.
Which is a great name.
It really is. So our mission for this deep dive is to unpack how you can transform these brutal daily screen time battles into predictable, even like peaceful family routines.
Because it is possible.
Right. We're going to explore the underlying psychology of why shifting away from this mindset of, controlling your children to instead creating clear expectations can fundamentally change the atmosphere in your home. And this is long before a tablet or television is ever even turned on.
Yeah, and I think the overarching theme across all these sources is this desperate need to address the emotional reality of the modern parent. Like, before we even get to the technology itself, we really have to look at the psychological state of the people managing it.
Which is usually not great.
No, it's not.
Yeah.
The research points to this very real phenomenon that we can call screen time burnout. Parents are just suffering from severe decision fatigue.
Oh, absolutely.
Because every single day it requires like a dozen micro decisions about screens. Is an hour too much? Does this educational game actually count as screen time? Am I being too strict and, isolating my kid? Or am I being too lenient and rotting their brain?
And the guilt that follows either choice is just completely draining.
Exactly.
That decision fatigue is so real. You just want a break, but giving them the screen makes you feel guilty. And then taking it away causes a fight, which completely ruins the break you were trying to take in the first place.
It's a vicious cycle.
It really is. And that brings us to the first major conceptual shift in the Bornfab framework. They are incredibly deliberate about the language they use. They explicitly argue that you should never, ever call your family's rules a screen time contract.
Right, they want you to call it a peace agreement.
Yeah. And my initial thought when I read that was, okay, we're just swapping out a word to make it sound nicer, right? Just marketing.
Sure, yeah.
But the more I looked at it, treating kids like little corporate lawyers is exactly what a contract does.
That is such a good way to put it. Words carry immense psychological weight, especially for a developing brain. So when you introduce a contract into a family dynamic, you are inherently introducing this legalistic framework.
Right.
And what do people do with contracts? They look for loopholes. They argue over semantics. And children, developmentally speaking, are just absolutely brilliant at finding the gray areas in literally any system you build.
Oh, they're geniuses at it. They'll say, well, technically you didn't say I couldn't watch YouTube on the smart fridge screen while standing in the kitchen, Mom.
Yes.
They find the 1 inch of daylight you left open, and they drive a truck right through it.
They really do. And that is a totally natural part of their cognitive development, by the way. They are testing boundaries to see how the world works. But when you frame the rules as a contract, you're basically inviting them to negotiate.
You're setting the table for an argument.
Exactly. You're setting up an adversarial, authoritarian power struggle. And human beings naturally resist authoritarian control. When a parent dictates terms from on high, the child's instinct is to push back, just to preserve their autonomy.
Makes sense.
But however, framing this as a peace agreement or a family ritual, it changes the emotional landscape entirely. It moves the dynamic from, unilateral dictation to collaboration. The psychological message becomes we are all on the same team, our home is a place of peace, and these are the shared principles that protect that peace.
Okay, I hear the psychology behind that, but I have to push back a little on the reality of it. Does changing the vocabulary from contract to ritual or peace agreement actually make a stubborn 8-year-old respect the rules more? I mean, kids are kids.
Yeah.
A rose by any other name is still a rule that stops them from playing Minecraft.
Well, the vocabulary shift alone won't magically stop a tantrum, right? But it fundamentally changes the pregame setup. The problem with how most families handle screen time is that the rules are often subjective and reactive. You spring a surprise boundary on them in the heat of the moment when they are, heavily dopamine invested in a video game. But a ritual or a formal agreement means the expectations are crystal clear. They're negotiated and established in a state of calm way before the screen even turns on.
Okay, I see.
Children actually thrive on predictability. Their brains crave it because it means safety. So when the boundary is entirely predictable, arguments naturally have a chance to become conversations. You remove the element of surprise, which is the primary trigger for that fight or flight response that leads to a meltdown.
That makes a lot of sense. The tantrum isn't always about the screen turning off. It's about the sudden, jarring abruptness of the transition.
Exactly.
So if we're ditching the contract for a collaborative agreement, we really have to look at the philosophy driving that agreement. Because the way the source material frames the role of technology is a massive departure from the usual advice you see out there.
It really is.
Usually, parenting articles about screen time are just pure doom and gloom. It's all about how screens are melting their prefrontal cortex, the algorithms are evil, and, the only solution is to throw the iPads into the ocean and move to a cabin in the woods.
Goes totally off the grid. Yeah.
Right. But this framework actively rejects that panic.
It does. The approach here is deeply pragmatic. It starts by acknowledging a fundamental truth, which is that technology is amazing. I mean, it helps us learn, it allows for incredible creativity, it connects us globally. By starting from a place of validating the positive aspects of technology, you are actually validating the child's lived reality.
Because if you start by telling an 8-year-old that screens are evil and toxic, they are going to immediately tune you out.
Right.
Their lived experience tells them screens are incredibly fun and socially important.
Precisely. If you position yourself in direct opposition to something they value so highly, you just become the enemy. But if you start by saying, we agree that this technology is wonderful, and we agree that it should improve our lives rather than control them, you build a bridge.
Yeah.
The stated goal here is not less technology. The paradigm shift is aiming for better technology.
Better technology, not less. I feel like that relieves so much pressure for parents. Because in the articles we reviewed, you see this immense parental anxiety. You're caught in this impossible trap.
Yeah, you really are.
On one hand, you're terrified of your kids falling down the rabbit hole of endless, mindless scrolling. But on the other hand, there is a very real, very valid fear that if you completely ban technology, your child will fall behind.
Oh,
They won't know how to navigate the digital world, or they'll be socially ostracized because all their peers are bonding over these digital ecosystems.
It's the ultimate modern parenting dilemma. You want to protect them from the dangers of the digital world, but you also have to prepare them to live in it. And this better, not less philosophy, it provides this really non-alarmist middle ground. It removes the fear-mongering and replaces it with a simple premise.
Okay.
That screen time is not an inalienable human right. It is a tool, and accessing that tool is a privilege that comes with responsibility.
Okay, so how do we translate that beautiful philosophy into actual day-to-day boundaries? Because having a great philosophy doesn't magically get a kid to turn off the TV at dinner time.
Right, the rubber has to meet the road somewhere.
Exactly. This is where the framework introduces the concepts of the before and the after, these rigid, unmoving boundaries of when screen time starts and when it ends. And they use a strict checklist for the before phase. Screen time only begins when homework is complete, daily responsibilities are finished, family rules have been respected, and this is the big one, learning goals have been achieved.
Yeah, that requirement about achieving learning goals is really the mechanical heart of the Bornfab ecosystem. It utilizes what they call a learn-to-earn model.
I really want to dig into how this learn-to-earn mechanism actually functions, because it seems like it completely changes the parent-child dynamic.
It does. Mechanically, it means the child cannot access the entertainment side of their device until they have engaged with educational content. They're literally earning their digital minutes by completing math challenges, reading comprehension exercises, or, other cognitive tasks.
It's brilliant because it perfectly mirrors going to an arcade. When we were kids, you couldn't just walk into an arcade and start mashing the buttons on the Pac-Man machine and expect it to play.
No, you had to have quarters.
Right, you had to earn your allowance, take that money, convert it into tokens, and physically put the work in to unlock the game. You earned the play. But the most important part of the arcade analogy is what happens at the end. When your tokens run out, the machine simply powers down. The game is over.
That is the exact psychological mechanism at play here, and it is crucial for understanding why this reduces friction in the home. Let's look at the dopamine loop happening in a child's brain during screen time. When they're playing a game, their brain is just bathed in dopamine. It feels highly rewarding. So when a parent walks into the room and yells, "Turn it off, your time is up," the parent becomes an active, arbitrary threat to that dopamine supply.
Wow.
The child's brain perceives the parent as the obstacle, which triggers defensive anger.
You literally become the villain holding the power switch.
Exactly. But if the system is automated, if the child knows they only earned 30 minutes, and at the 30-minute mark, the arcade machine simply turns off, the brain processes that entirely differently. It's no longer a personal attack by mom or dad.
It's just gravity.
Right. It's environmental physics.
Yeah.
You can't negotiate with an arcade machine. You can't beg a powered-down scream for 5 more minutes.
Sorry, kiddo, you spent all your tokens. That's just how the machine works.
Yeah. By relying on a system where time is earned and automatically expires, you remove yourself from the role of the enforcer. You become a neutral third party who can actually sympathize with the child. Like, "Oh man, I know it's a bummer that your time ran out. What are we going to do instead?"
Oh, that's smart.
It forces the child to confront the reality of their own time management rather than just fighting against your authority.
And the framework leans heavily into this in the after phase of their boundaries. The agreement dictates a very strict exit strategy. It says that when the time is over, we don't argue, we don't negotiate, we don't beg, we simply pause. But there is one specific concept they introduce here that completely shifts the emotional stakes of turning off the screen.
Yes.
They emphasize the idea that, quote, tomorrow always brings another opportunity to earn screen time again.
That reframing targets the scarcity mindset that drives so many tantrums. When a screen abruptly turns off, a child's immature emotional regulation system just panics. They feel a sense of absolute loss, as if they will never ever get to play this game again. The stakes feel incredibly high to them.
It feels like the end of the world.
It really does. So by continuously reinforcing that the opportunity simply refreshes tomorrow, you lower those stakes. You're teaching them that the end of screen time is not a punishment or a permanent loss. It is just a temporary pause in a predictable cycle. It takes a massive amount of anxiety out of the transition.
It's like installing a reset button for the whole family's nervous system.
Exactly.
So we've got the daily boundaries operating. The tokens are earned through learning, the tokens are spent, and the machine turns off. But the sources show that this agreement goes much deeper than just a daily checklist.
It does, yeah.
It transitions from managing daily behavior into shaping long-term character through a set of core commitments. Things like agreeing that real life always comes before screens, speaking kindly when time ends, telling the truth about usage, and remembering that people matter more than devices.
All great values.
They are. But one rule in particular stood out to me as a potential logistical nightmare. It's the one that says, we never hide screens from one another. As a philosophy, I love it. But practically speaking, how does a busy parent actually enforce that without hovering over their kid's shoulder 24/7? Are we supposed to become full-time digital private investigators in our own homes?
Well, that is the most common pushback from parents when they see these kinds of agreements. The fear is that by setting a rule like never hide screens, you are committing yourself to endless surveillance. But the underlying psychology of this framework is actually the exact opposite of surveillance.
Explain that, because if I'm not watching them, how do I know they aren't hiding a tablet under their blanket?
You don't always know, and that is actually part of the design. The goal of this agreement is not to create a flawless, hermetically sealed environment where the child is physically prevented from ever making a mistake. If you hover over their shoulder all day, you're still doing all the regulating for them. You're acting as their external prefrontal cortex.
Their external prefrontal cortex.
Yeah.
Meaning you're doing all the impulse control and decision-making for them because that part of their brain isn't fully developed yet.
Exactly. But eventually they have to develop their own. The source material refers to this as building the child's internal thinking DNA. The goal is to instill habits of mind responsibility, logical reasoning, honesty, and self-regulation that function when you are not in the room.
Right.
When you both sign an agreement that says, we never hide screens, you're establishing a behavioral standard based on mutual trust. Will they slip up and try to hide it? Yes, absolutely, because their impulse control is still developing.
They're kids.
Right. But when they do slip up, you aren't catching them in a cat and mouse game. You are referencing a commitment they voluntarily made. It becomes a teaching moment about integrity and trust rather than a fight about being caught breaking a rule.
That is a profound shift.
Yeah.
We aren't just policing screen time to keep them quiet. We're actively using the friction of screen time to teach them how to be responsible humans. It's almost like a behavioral scaffolding system for the digital age.
That's a great way to put it. And that scaffolding builds genuine competence. When a child learns to manage their own time, when they know they earned their entertainment by engaging their brain and learning first, they build a sense of mastery. They aren't just passive consumers of content anymore, they're active managers of their own digital diet. And competence is the foundation of true, lasting confidence.
Which leads perfectly into what the framework calls the family values trade-off. It lays out the ultimate goal of all this hard work. By implementing these boundaries and shifting to this earn-to-play mindset, the agreement aims to generate more curiosity, creativity, learning, meaningful conversations, and shared memories.
Yeah.
And the trade-off is that you get less arguing, less parental guilt, and less mindless scrolling. It essentially articulates what every exhausted parent actually wants out of their home life. You aren't aiming for a zero-screen household. You're aiming for a high-connection household.
And that physical act of making the agreement official is the final vital step. The framework suggests that the parent and child physically sign and date the document together. It solidifies everything we've talked about. It's this visual, tangible reminder that this isn't a list of demands handed down by a dictator. It is a mutual promise between partners about how the family operates.
So to synthesize all of this for you listening, you truly do not have to accept that daily, exhausting battle over devices as a permanent reality of modern parenting. By shifting your approach away from a restrictive, loophole-heavy contract and moving toward a collaborative, clearly defined peace agreement, you can replace all that endless negotiation with automated earned expectations.
Right.
Screen time transforms from a baseline entitlement that your kids will fight to defend into a celebrated reward for a job well done.
It really takes one of the greatest sources of modern family friction and completely flips it, turning it into an engine for building self-reliance and responsibility.
It is a brilliant reframe. And as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with a thought to mull over, looking beyond just the next few years of your child's life. Think about the world they are going to inherit. It is going to be infinitely more saturated with digital distractions, algorithmic polls, and ubiquitous screens than anything we are dealing with today.
Oh, without a doubt.
If we can teach our children to manage their own digital boundaries right now, if they master this earn-to-play mindset where they inherently understand how to delay gratification, put the work in first, and gracefully accept a limit when the time is up, how profoundly is that going to shape them as adults?
It's massive.
Imagine the immense advantage they'll have in their future careers, their ability to maintain deep focus, and their capacity to be fully present in their real-world relationships, simply because they learned how to walk away from a screen without a fight when they were 8 years old.
We are essentially equipping them with the exact cognitive tools they will need to thrive in a world we can barely even picture yet.
So tonight, when that clock starts ticking down and you feel that familiar tension building in your chest, take a breath. Remember, you don't have to start counting down from 5. You might just need to sit down and negotiate a new kind of peace.
End screen time battles today. Download Bornfab on the App Store and Google Play.